Hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. You ever think your life's a bit messy and then read someone else's story and suddenly feel a whole lot better? Today on rSpace, stranger danger. Cheating wife was taking our daughter to her affair partner's house. I exposed his crimes and got full custody. I'm normally a gentle, easygoing guy, but the past few days have tested me in a way I never imagined was possible. I actually had to leave my house to make sure I wouldn't do something stupid. I'm a dad to a wonderful 3-year-old girl, and she's my world. I take her safety very seriously, and I'd do anything to protect her. So when I found out that my wife was carelessly endangering her, I lost it. My wife, Olivia, 29 female, and I, 31 male, have been married for 5 years. We met through a mutual friend who set us up. I'm a craftsman, a metalsmith, so I spend a lot of time in my workshop and don't have coworkers. So I appreciate the help of a matchmaker. We hit it off immediately. There were sparks on the first date, and we set up a second date the very same week. We couldn't get enough of each other. Things didn't change when we got married. We were still madly in love and as close as ever. Soon after that, we had our daughter. Our lives changed a lot, but we still made time for each other. We never drifted apart as far as I could tell, so I don't know where everything went wrong. I don't know exactly when she decided that she needed to start cheating. I think it's important to lay out how our living arrangement works. She does data entry and started working from home after she had the baby. I'm a metalsmith who works from a home bench for my smaller pieces and a workshop for my larger projects. The big projects tend to pay the bills, so I'm usually working out of my workshop for most of the week. My daughter is a talkative little kid with a vivid imagination, nothing out of the ordinary for a kid her age. But I found it weird when she started referring to an uncle. We could be playing or reading a story together, and she'd say something about how she read the book when her uncle was around. What was really strange was the fact that she doesn't have any uncles. I was an only child, and my wife only had one sister. I had some male friends that she'd met, but she didn't call any of them uncle. At first, I thought it might be an imaginary friend sort of situation, but I found it odd to think that a kid would come up with an imaginary uncle. I couldn't get over my curiosity, so I made a post about it on Reddit asking if anyone else's kid did the same thing. I was surprised when I got a few comments suggesting that my wife might be cheating. They said there were a few stories of young children exposing affairs by bringing up the name of parents' affair partner. I wanted to laugh that off. It didn't sound like it could be true, but I can't say the same thought hadn't occurred to me earlier. I sat on that for about a day, trying to figure out what to do. Our relationship felt great, and I didn't have any reason to suspect her of infidelity, apart from the uncle thing, but it was so weird and hard to explain that it felt like a solid reason to do some digging. At first, I asked my daughter some questions about this uncle of hers, but her answers didn't clear anything up. My next idea was to ask Olivia about it and see how she reacted. That was what made me decide to look further into the idea that she might be cheating. I didn't even accuse her of anything. We were talking one evening when I casually asked her if she'd noticed our daughter referring to an uncle. She looked away from me when she said she'd noticed it and that she was sure it meant nothing. I found it suspicious that she was so eager to dismiss the topic, so I didn't let it go. I told her how weird I thought it was that she was talking about an uncle when she didn't have one. She waved it off again, saying that she had a wild imagination and she probably picked it up from cartoons. She was looking away from me the whole time. That didn't quite confirm my suspicions, but it made me feel like I had a good enough reason to take a deeper look. I went through her phone when I got a chance. It didn't take long to uncover that she was having an affair. She was bringing a man to the house whenever I was at my workshop. Sometimes, if I told her that I would be out late, she would go over to his house, and she'd bring our daughter with her. I don't think I can fully explain how angry that made me. Finding out my wife was cheating on me was devastating. I thought our relationship was perfect, and infidelity had never been on my list of things to worry about. But now I had the proof right in my hands. But the fact that she was involving my daughter in this was even worse. I didn't know who this guy was. I couldn't guarantee her safety around him. I was glad Olivia was in the other room because I almost lost it. I wanted to throw her phone into a wall, storm down to where she was, and scream at her. Instead, I took a deep breath and calmed myself. I sent the messages to myself so I could go through them in more detail. I wanted to make sure I had all the information straight before I decided to talk to her about it. I was already thinking of divorce as well. Cheating was something I couldn't forgive, but endangering my child was on another level entirely. I didn't sleep much that night. I spent the whole evening sitting up and going through the messages that I'd forwarded to myself. She'd been cheating on me for 3 months, though they'd been talking for a little longer than that. But I was surprised to realize I didn't care that much about the cheating. I just wanted to know what kind of man she'd been exposing my daughter to. I couldn't figure out much about him from the messages, but I was also able to find him online. That didn't help much because he didn't have much personal information online. He was a complete stranger to me. I came up with the idea of hiring a private investigator to get more information about him. I planned to get custody of my daughter, and I knew I would be fighting an uphill battle as a man. Every bit of evidence I could get would help. But now I'm conflicted about how to handle things. I don't want my daughter to end up near that man again, but I also want to wait until I have solid proof before I confront her. Should I just go ahead and tell her I know everything, or should I wait for the PI to get back to me first? How can I prevent her from taking my kid to his place in the meantime? She had the nerve to brush it off like your daughter just had a wild imagination? No, man. That's not imagination. That's a toddler telling the truth in crayon because mom can't keep her legs or her lies shut. Your daughter is stuck in the middle of it, being exposed to God knows who. So yeah, it might be time to step in now. You don't even have to drop the full truth yet. Just hit her with the, I don't want any strange men around our daughter boundary, and make it clear it's not for negotiation. Update. I appreciate the outpouring of support I got on my last post. This has really been a hard period for me. I've just been keeping down a lot of anger from the idea of my wife bringing my little girl to another man's house while she had an affair. Honestly, it makes it hard for me to just look at her without completely blowing my top. The general opinion from commenters was that getting the PI was actually critically important. I agreed strongly with that, but my main concern was that she'd take my daughter along on another trip to her affair partner's house when I was out at work. Luckily, someone gave me a great suggestion. Since I work for myself, I could just take the time off from work. I sent an email to my customers with outstanding orders explaining that there would be a short delay due to personal issues. Most of them were understanding. One of them couldn't wait though, so I refunded him with no hard feelings between us. I spoke to a private investigator and told him what I needed. I already had proof of my wife's affair. I just needed him to find out whatever he could about this man. I explained the full situation. I wanted to know if my daughter was being exposed to someone unsafe, and I was looking for anything that could give me the upper hand in the upcoming custody battle. After that, I found a lawyer to discuss my options and file for divorce. The next thing to do was explain to my wife why I wasn't going to work. That wasn't very hard either. I just told her I had some soreness in my elbow and I wanted to spend a few days resting it. I'd had problems with my elbow in the past, though I'd usually only take a couple of days off for it to recover. It would be a hard sell convincing her that I needed a rest for a week or two. Staying at home with her wasn't easy. Every time I looked at her, I imagined my child sitting in a strange living room while her mom was in the bedroom getting plowed by some guy I didn't know. I lost all respect for her, and it took every bit of effort I had to treat her like I still cared about her at all. After a few days, she started to show concern that my elbow hadn't recovered yet, or maybe it was suspicion. Whatever it was, I threw her off by telling her that I was going to get it checked out by a doctor. I came back and told her that it was inflamed and I just needed a few more days of rest. She didn't question it. When the PI got back to me, he had a lot of information about her new guy. First, he told me that he lived in a bad neighborhood about 20 minutes away. Hearing that was enough to give me chills, but it only got worse. He told me that he had a domestic from 5 years ago, filed by an ex-girlfriend. According to the court documents, they'd gotten into an argument over her watching TV with the volume too high. She claimed it had ended with him shoving her into a door. He took a plea deal to avoid jail time, but it was still on his record. The ex had also gotten a restraining order against him, which was granted for 6 months. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She'd been bringing our 3-year-old daughter to the house of a man who had shoved a woman for playing the TV too loud. He'd had a restraining order taken out against him at one point. I wasn't being overprotective. My first instinct about the situation had been completely right. I sent the information from the PI over to the lawyer and told him that I wanted to get my kid away from my wife fast. I also said I wanted to press charges. He sympathized with my anger, but he told me she hadn't actually committed a crime that she could be prosecuted for. However, she'd committed a number of acts that a custody court wouldn't look kindly on. He suggested filing for emergency custody, and I agreed. My main goal was to keep my daughter from ever coming in contact with him again. With the divorce and emergency custody hearing both filed and in motion, I decided it was time to confront Olivia. I waited until late at night when our daughter was sound asleep, and then I told her everything. I started off by confessing that my arm was fine. I'd only been staying home because I wanted to keep an eye on her. She looked confused, but also cautious, like she had an idea of where the conversation was heading. I told her that I knew that the uncle our daughter had been referring to was her affair partner, and that she'd been going to see him while I was at work. She opened her mouth to say something, but I told her there was no point in denying it because I'd seen the messages. She couldn't meet my eyes when she said she was sorry. She said she knew it was a stupid thing to do even when she was doing it, and that she would get help. I told her not to bother. I didn't care why she was doing it. We were done, and frankly, it was irrelevant. What mattered to me was that she'd endangered our daughter in the process. She looked surprised and said that she had always been safe because she brought her along. I asked her if she knew what kind of man her affair partner was, and she looked offended. She said she did, and that I didn't know him. I told her what the PI had uncovered. He had a history of violence, against women specifically. I brought up the neighborhood and the building he lived in and asked if it had seemed like a safe place for our child. She didn't answer. She was still stuck on the part about domestic violence. She said it couldn't be true. I assured her that it was, and added the fact that it had been over a TV being too loud. I told her frankly that I didn't care if he smacked her around, but I'd be dead and buried before I'd ever let a man like him have the chance to treat my daughter like that. The craziest thing is that she started to defend him after that. She said she didn't believe that he'd hit his ex-girlfriend, and that even if it was true, he was a different man now. When she started insisting that he would never harm our child because he loved children, I told her to stop talking. She could save the explanation for a judge. When I told her that I'd filed for divorce, she looked shocked. She said we hadn't even had a chance to talk it through. She knew it was her fault and she was ready to change. I told her I wasn't interested in changing her. I just wanted to keep my child away from her and her boyfriend. Over the next few days, she was served divorce papers and the custody hearing was held. I was hopeful that things would turn out my way, but the judge didn't give me custody of her. She said that she understood my concern and I had significant evidence, but there was no proof that any harm had taken place to my daughter. Without that, the court couldn't override Olivia's parental rights, and I couldn't be given full custody. I wasn't happy with the decision. I still think it's a load of bull. But some good came out of the ruling too. The judge agreed that it was wrong for her affair partner to have been introduced to my daughter without my consent, and agreed that his criminal history meant that there was a possibility of danger in the future. She ordered that my daughter couldn't be left in the affair partner's care or brought to his home, and that a violation would result in a reconsideration of the custody arrangement. It was a small victory, and I took it. Of course, cheaters are known for being people who respect the rules, so I was still worried that she might sneak off to her affair partner's house with her. So, as tough as it was for me, I didn't leave home. I stayed there just to make sure she was safe. I didn't intend to leave that house if I didn't have custody of my daughter. It was awkward living with a wife I didn't love anymore. She walked on eggshells around me most of the time. Even though I didn't shout at her, she could tell just how angry I was at her. She kept trying to explain that the affair was over and that she was ready for change, but I didn't give her a chance. I mostly ignored her when I could. I treated her like that roommate that you really don't like, just talking to her when it was necessary. I continued working from my home bench, taking on projects that didn't require me to go to the workshop. It was a financial hit, but it was worth it, so I could keep an eye on her and make sure her affair partner wasn't coming around our house anymore. I knew the court order was probably enough to scare her into not bringing him around my daughter anymore, but I wasn't going to take any chances. I didn't have any reason to trust her anymore. Despite Olivia's promises that she had called things off with her affair partner, I had a feeling she was lying. She would head out of the house once in a while, dressed up nicely, as if she had someone to impress. She wouldn't take our daughter with her, but I was still concerned. If she was still involved with this man, then it was important for the upcoming custody hearing. The court would want to know if she still planned on exposing our daughter to him. So I got my PI to do some digging again. This time the assignment was just to confirm whether she was still seeing him. He got back to me in a few days this time, and his findings weren't surprising. Olivia was still seeing the guy, but that wasn't all. He'd also observed a string of different women and unsavory-looking men visiting his apartment at different times. He'd done some research into those people as well, and found some of them had drug charges. It was just further proof of an unfit environment for my daughter. The PI had photographic evidence of everything, and I forwarded it all to my lawyer. At the next custody hearing, we presented all of our evidence. This time, the judge didn't hold back. She agreed that her continued relationship with him meant that it was unrealistic to expect no exposure between her affair partner and my daughter. The judge also cited his past domestic violence conviction and the presence of people with drug charges at his home as evidence of poor judgment on her part. I was granted physical custody of my daughter, and Olivia was allowed supervised visitation. She had a chance of unsupervised visits later on, depending on how things went, but my lawyer assured me that her chances of gaining even partial custody of our daughter were very, very slim. I still can't believe I won. The truth is that Olivia slipped up many times, and if not for that, we might have ended up sharing custody, despite everything that should have been against her. I'm just thankful that things worked out the way they did. Raising a child as young as her on my own hasn't been easy. It's taken a lot of lifestyle adjustments. I've modified my home workshop a bit to allow me to take on some larger projects at home. I've been lucky to have very supportive family members who can step in for me too. When I absolutely need to go to the workshop, I drop my daughter off with either my mom or my sister, who's a stay-at-home mom raising a kid of her own. Olivia and her family have turned me into a villain for what I did. I've explained to them multiple times about the danger she exposed my daughter to, and even offered to show them the photographic evidence, but they can't be convinced. Eventually, I just blocked all their numbers. The only person I really need to communicate with out of all of them was Olivia, and that was only because she had visitation rights. Every time she sees me, she treats me like I'm the devil himself, which is funny, considering who she's dating now. Yeah, despite swearing to me that they're done, she's still with him. I hired a PI on one more occasion just to keep our evidence up to date, because she's been threatening to appeal. Not only is she still visiting him, but she bailed him out of jail a week ago for his first drug possession charge. They grow up so fast. I don't have a single bit of empathy for Olivia. The real victim in all of this is my daughter. She doesn't understand what's going on yet, and it's been hard to explain to her why she doesn't get to see her mom all the time. It's heartbreaking seeing her cry or throw tantrums because she wants her mom, but I know it's better than exposing her to the type of people her mom is hanging out with now. I've been working with a therapist who's been equipping me to explain things to her and handle her needs at this delicate period. His advice has been invaluable in helping me and my daughter cope with our new lives. From what I see of Olivia when it's time for visitation, she's not doing so well. I don't care. She's not my problem to solve. She put my daughter in danger, and she learned what happens when you piss off Dad. Honestly, it blows my mind that she had zero hesitation about bringing your daughter around a man with a domestic violence record. That's not poor judgment, that's active negligence. I don't care how reformed she thought he was. He's changed, doesn't cut it. The judge's initial ruling? A frustrating reminder that the system sometimes needs your kid to be physically harmed before they'll actually do anything. And her family? Of course they turned on you. That's what enablers do. They'd rather cling to the lie that she's a poor misunderstood angel. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.